Welcome back to DFC Books. Today we're doing a deep dive into H.P. Lovecraft's The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. We're mostly looking at it through the lens of I.N.J. Colbert's fantastic graphic novel adaptation. Our mission, really, is to untangle this pretty complex plot, get a handle on the characters, and track this kind of creeping horror that builds up mainly through the eyes of Dr. Marinus Bicknell Willett.
Right, and the whole thing kicks off with this baffling mystery. Charles Dexter Ward vanishes from a locked room at a private hospital. Poof! Gone!
60 feet up, sheer drop outside the window, door locked from the inside. Classic impossible situation.
Exactly. But the real hook, the thing that grabs you immediately, isn't how he vanished. It's the reaction of Dr. Willett, the family doctor who's known Charles his whole life.
Yeah, what's his reaction?
Relief. Actual palpable relief that Charles is gone. It's incredibly unsettling. You know straight away that whatever Willett thinks escaped wasn't just Charles having a breakdown. It was something else.
So we're immediately thrown into the sense that the person in that room wasn't really Charles, or at least not the Charles everyone knew.
Precisely. And that relief sets us off on this journey, digging into a family secret that stretches back, 150 years?
Yeah, connecting 18th century weirdness alchemy, maybe body snatching, with this very 20th century sense of cosmic dread. It's a core Lovecraft story, isn't it?
Absolutely core. He wrote it 1927, 1928, somewhere on there. And it really blends that old Gothic horror vibe, the dark family secret, the creepy old house with his unique brand of cosmic horror.
The whole insignificance of humanity thing.
That's it. The idea that all our history, our lives, our morals, they just don't matter in the face of these vast, ancient, and frankly malevolent forces just lurking outside our reality, and setting it so firmly in Providence, Rhode Island, with real streets and history, just makes the cosmic horror feel even more invasive when it finally breaks through.
Okay, so to really grasp this whole sprawling story, we need to understand the players, because identity and the theft of identity is right at the heart of it.
Definitely. Let's start with the dossier.
Right. First up, Charles Dexter Ward himself, the subject of the case, the patient who vanished.
Yeah, Charles. He starts as this really bright, curious kid, super into history, genealogy, digging into Providence's past, an antiquarian.
Initial curiosity seems pretty harmless, right?
It's a love of history.
Totally harmless at first. But that's the hook. His enthusiasm, his desire to learn, becomes the very thing that undoes him. He's kind of the classic archetype, the learner corrupted by forbidden knowledge.
So he wasn't looking for trouble initially.
Not consciously, I don't think. He was chasing lost history, family secrets. But when his focus narrows onto one specific ancestor, Joseph Curwen, that's when the innocent curiosity twists into this dangerous obsession. Leads straight to his breakdown and, well, his disappearance.
Okay. And the man witnessing this, trying to make sense of it, is Dr. Willett. Dr. Marinus Bicknell Willett. He's our narrator, effectively. The family physician knows Charles since birth, as the text says. He's the one piecing it all together for us, the listener, explaining why Charles's parents eventually had him committed.
He seems like the rational anchor in all this.
He absolutely is. He represents science, skepticism, observation. He has close and continuous knowledge. That phrase is important. He's not some mystic. He's working from a medical file, looking at symptoms, dates, physical evidence.
But he gets dragged into the impossible.
He's forced into it. The changes in Charles, the historical documents, the sheer weirdness, it all points to something that defies rational explanation. He has to confront the impossible because the facts leave him no other choice.
Right. Now, the source of all this trouble, Joseph Curwen, the ancestor.
Curwen. Charles's great-great-great-grandfather. He's the real villain here, but he's fascinatingly layered. On the surface, he's this historical figure. A merchant in Providence, involved in shipping, maybe even the slave trade. Born in Salem, 1662.
Salem.
Yeah.
That's suggestive.
Very. And the first big red flag, even before we get to the magic, is his lifespan. He's apparently still active, looking no older than 30, well into the 1770s. That's not normal.
Definitely not. And his methods, what was he actually doing?
Well, the whispers connect her to alchemy, necromancy. He had this huge library of forbidden books. But the key thing, the real engine of the plot, is his specific method of necromancy.
This isn't just ghosts and seances, then?
No, it's much creepier, almost pseudoscientific. It comes from this quote by a guy named Borellus that Charles finds. It talks about using the essential salts of human dust.
Essential salts, what does that mean?
It's the idea that after a body is incinerated, some fundamental essence, some chemical residue, the
Yeah.
essential salts remains. And Borellus claims a philosopher could, theoretically, use these salts to recall the shape, the consciousness of the dead ancestor.
Whoa. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
chemical resurrection. Not magic, but some kind of lost science.
Exactly. Lovecraft grounds it in this weird materialistic concept. Your identity, your mind, it's all reducible to this powder, and with the right formula, the right chance maybe, you can bring it back.
That makes Kerwin less of a wizard and more of a terrifying biochemist.
A biochemist of the soul, yeah. That's what makes him so dangerous. He's manipulating the fundamental building blocks of identity itself.
Okay. We also need to touch on the parents, Theodore and Anne Ward.
Right. They represent the ordinary world just shattering under the pressure of Charles's descent. And the mother seems more sensitive to the supernatural horror of it all. She's the one who collapses after a particularly bad incident.
And Theodore.
The father, he seems more practical, maybe focused on the mental deterioration, the weird behavior. But his worry is just as real. They're basically the first casualties of whatever Kerwin unleashed through Charles.
And then there's this mysterious Dr. Allen figure. He shows up later.
Yeah, Dr. Allen. Described as this, thin, scholarly stranger with dark glasses and a beard. He's introduced as Charles's research partner out at this bungalow in Pawtuxet.
But he's a bit of a red herring, right? Or something more complicated.
Definitely more complicated. He's basically a placeholder for the imposter. The narrative drops this crucial hint early on. Willett hears Allen's race later and thinks it sounds frighteningly familiar.
So the first clue that maybe Allen and the person pretending to be Charles are linked.
Or maybe even the same person, just swapping roles. It's the first crack in the whole deception, suggesting this single, very old personality is pulling the strings.
Okay, let's rewind. To understand what happened to Charles, Willett, and us, we have to go back to the 18th century. It all starts with Charles digging into why Joseph Kerwin was basically scrubbed from the family history.
Right, and the trigger is so mundane, almost bureaucratic. Charles finds these old family records, but 2 pages have been carefully stuck together, glued tight. And the page numbers were faked to hide the join.
Someone really wanted to hide something.
Exactly. And what was hidden? An entry from 1772 stating that Eliza Kerwin, Joseph's widow, had gone back to using her maiden name, Tillinghast. The sheer effort involved, the glue, the renumbering screams, major dark secret. That's the hook for Charles.
And when he starts digging, the reasons become pretty clear. Kerwin was busy.
Oh, incredibly busy and terrifying, even without the necromancy. We mentioned the longevity thing, born 1662, still looks 30 in the 1770s. That alone is weird.
But his actions were grounded in real-world horror, too.
Absolutely. He had this secluded farm out in Pawtuxet, kept separate from his wife and main residence. Why? Because neighbors reported hearing strange cries and howls late at night. This wasn't quiet study. It was loud, messy, desperate stuff happening out there.
And the dockside rumors add another layer. All that food going to the farm.
Yeah, the logistics are chillin'. Way too much food and supplies for one person or even a small household. Sailors started getting spooked by the gossip and deserting his ships. It heavily implies he wasn't just feeding himself.
Feeding something else.
Or someone else. It ties right into the accusations of grave robbing, body snatching. There's that story about the 2 soldiers from the Royal Regiment who vanished right after Kerwin was seen chatting with some red-coated strangers near the farm. It suggests he was actively procuring materials, living materials.
And then there's the ship from Cairo, the Fortaleza.
Right. That detail just blows the scale wide open. It's not just local grave robbing. Admiral Wallace intercepts this ship sailing from Cairo, bound for Kerwin's farm, and its cargo. Nothing but Egyptian mummies.
Mummies? Why mummies?
Well, think about the essential salts. Mummies are preserved bodies, maybe a pure source. Or maybe he needed specific ancestors, specific knowledge locked away in those ancient forms. Whatever the reason, it shows Kerwin was tapping into global, ancient networks for his resources. The Vice Admiralty Court even released the ship, banned it from Rhode Island waters because people were so freaked out.
So he had this whole international supply chain for his necromancy business.
Pretty much. Which brings us to a really key event from this period, probably the most important event in Chapter 1 of the story, the forced marriage.
Ah, yes. This shows Kerwin's power wasn't just supernatural.
Exactly. It shows how he weaponized knowledge. Eliza Tillinghast was already engaged to a guy named Ezra Whedon, but Kerwin wanted her. So he goes to her father, Captain Tillinghast, and essentially blackmails him.
How?
By threatening to expose some sordid history from the Tillinghast family past. We don't know what it was, but it was bad enough that the captain breaks off Eliza's engagement and marries her to Kerwin the very next evening.
Wow. Instant turnaround.
It proves Kerwin wasn't just digging up the dead, he was digging up dirt on the living, using secrets as leverage for his own creepy desires. It's banal evil mixed with the occult.
But this kind of behavior creates enemies.
Yeah.
Ezra Whedon, the guy who lost Eliza, he doesn't just walk away.
No, he becomes Kerwin's nemesis. Whedon starts tracking Kerwin's activities, gathering evidence, building a coalition of worried townsfolk. And they get their smoking gun. An intercepted letter. From one of Kerwin's necromancer buddies, possibly Simon Orne or Edward Hutchinson. The letter contained two absolutely critical pieces of information.
Okay, what were they?
First, this chilling warning. Do not call up any that you cannot put down. It confirms Kerwin was messing with forces even his own network considered dangerous, uncontrollable.
Right, summoning things beyond his control.
And second, even more damning. The letter reveals Kerwin's explicit plan to return as my son. Proof positive he was plotting his own resurrection using his descendant's body and the essential salts method.
That must have been the final straw.
It was. This leads directly to the most important event of the next part. Let's call it Chapter 2. The Purge of Kerwin in 1771.
A raid on the farm.
A full-on assault. Friday, April 12, 1771. 3 groups of armed men, led by Whedon and others, storm the Pawtuxet farm. They eventually find this huge hidden oak door in a hillside leading down into caverns. They break it down.
And Kerwin.
He dies in the fight down there. But apparently he was screaming and laughing maniacally as it happened. It wasn't a simple death.
And there was something else found later, wasn't there? Something weird.
Yeah, about a week later, they find this charred, twisted body out in the fields nearby. The description is pure Lovecraft, not wholly allied to any creature. So monstrous that the raiders decided to cover the whole thing up. They spread a story that Kerwin died fighting customs officers. They buried the truth, hoping they'd destroyed him and, crucially, the essential salts needed for his return.
They thought they'd ended it, but they hadn't destroyed everything.
Which brings us to the big question. How does 1771 bleed into 1928? How did Kerwin's plan eventually succeed where the ancestors failed to start it? It comes down to Charles finding the very thing they tried to destroy.
It starts with that portrait, right? The one of Kerwin that Charles tracks down.
Yeah, he finds it in the old family house on Only Court. And the description is vital. The previous owners got rid of it because they found it unwholesome. They said there was evil in those eyes. It suggests Kerwin's power, his essence, somehow lingered even in his image.
Creepy. And behind the painting.
Bingo. A hidden recess. And inside, yellowed papers, a copybook, Kerwin's notes, mostly in cipher, but Charles, the budding antiquarian, starts cracking it.
And he realizes what he's found.
He realizes it's revolutionary. He claims the knowledge in these papers could more profoundly revolutionize the current conception of things than Einstein's work. That's the scale we're talking about. Not just magic spells, but rewriting the laws of physics, of life and death.
Finding the hidden knowledge must have really fueled his obsession.
Totally. It kicks off this frantic global search. Charles needs more information, maybe keys to the cipher, maybe related texts. His travel diary reads like a checklist of occult hotspots.
Where does he go?
London, stays near the British Museum, obviously. Paris, then it gets darker. Prague, where he apparently meets this very aged man. And then deep into Transylvania to visit a certain Baron Ferenczi at his castle.
Prague and Transylvania. Those names will come back later, won't they?
They absolutely will. These trips aren't tourism. They're about enlarging the possibilities of his work. He's connecting with the remnants of Kerwin's old network, people who are still around, still practicing, still unnaturally old.
Okay, so he gathers the knowledge, comes back to Providence.
Yeah.
And the experiments begin.
Yep. He holes himself up in the attic of the family home. The family starts hearing chanting, smelling these strange, noxious odors. Classic mad science setup.
The attic, not the basement. That's interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Okay.
Abby suggests he's reaching outwards, upwards, towards cosmic forces, rather than just digging down into the earth like Kerwin originally did. And the smells hint at the chemical process, the salts.
All this tension built up to the Good Friday incident. This seems like the real turning point, the most important event of this section, Chapter 3.
It absolutely is. This is when things go from obsessive research to active, terrifying manifestation. And it breaks his mother, Anne Ward. She collapses.
When did she actually experience what was so bad?
It's a multisensory assault. During Charles's chanting, she sees the sun momentarily blotted out. Then a flash, like lightning, strikes the house. A huge surge of unnatural energy.
Okay, dramatic. But the sound.
A sound is the clincher. She hears two voices. One is Charles, reciting the formulas from Kerwin's notes. The other is described as hideous, blasphemous, sudden, and abnormal.
Not human.
Definitely not human. And the second voice utters the specific alien incantation. Yeah, NGA Yog Sothoth, hell I can fee through dog.
Yog Sothoth, there it is. The explicit cosmic connection.
Yep. That's the moment the story confirms Charles isn't just dabbling in old alchemy. He's successfully contacted or summoned something related to one of Lovecraft's outer gods. He's opened a door he can't close. The power Curran tapped into goes way beyond simple resurrection. It's tied to the chaos of the cosmos.
So the implication is, he succeeded. He brought something back.
It seems so, because after this incident, Charles changes dramatically. His behavior, his focus, even his physical self.
How does he change?
First, the research shifts. He completely drops the antiquarian stuff, all the old history. Now he only reads modern book science, recent history, catching up on the world since 1771, essentially.
And he moves his operation.
Right. He stops the chanting in the attic and moves his vocal rituals out to a concrete bungalow in Pawtuxet. Significantly, it's on the same land where Kerwin's old farm stood. It's like the returned entity is setting up shop in its old territory. He also develops this ferocious appetite.
Catching up on 150 years of missed meals?
Something like that. But it's Dr. Willett, the physician, who notices the really alarming changes. The physical ones.
This is where his medical expertise becomes crucial evidence.
Absolutely crucial. Willett examines him and notes his skin is wrong. Cold, dry, coarse, like it doesn't quite fit. His breathing and heartbeat are irregular, asymmetrical. It's like the body is running, but imperfectly, artificially.
But the really damning thing, the thing only Willett would know for sure.
The birthmarks. This is the forensic proof of identity theft. Willett has known Charles since infancy. He knows Charles had a very specific olive-colored birthmark on his hip.
Yeah.
It's gone. Vanished without a trace. And in its place, appearing on Charles's chest, is a great black mole, or cicatrice. A scar that Willett knows for a fact was never there before.
Whoa.
Plus, Willett notes Charles's face now has this subtle look, this cast, which only the very aged acquire. It's not just stress, it's the physical imprint of extreme age. These aren't signs of madness, they're signs of replacement. The body still looks mostly like Charles, but the identifying marks, the very texture of life, belong to someone else. Someone very, very old. Someone like Joseph Kerwin.
Okay, so now it gets really interesting and really creepy. Willett's observations strongly suggest Charles isn't Charles anymore. He's an imposter. And this phase kicks off with a final, desperate message from the real Charles.
Right. In early 1929, just before the final curtain falls on the original Charles, he manages to get a letter to Willett. And it's frantic, terrifying.
Need to say.
It's basically a confession and a warning. He says he found terror, that he brought forth a monstrous abnormality. And then he gives Willett this chilling instruction. Shoot Dr. Allen on sight and dissolve his body in acid. Don't burn it.
Dissolve, not burn. That detail seems important, linking back to the salts. And he names Allen specifically.
Exactly. It's the last gasp of the real Charles, confirming he raised something, presumably Kerwin, that it's monstrous, and that it's now operating under the guise of Dr. Allen. He knows Allen is the enemy.
And right after this letter, Charles effectively vanishes from public view.
Yep. The figure, now known as Dr. Allen, takes over the Pawtuxet bungalow completely. He tells Charles's father, Theodore, that Charles is just resting out there, needs quiet, shouldn't be disturbed. It's a classic isolation tactic.
Kerwin, having returned, needs to consolidate control, secure the host body, establish the Allen identity.
Precisely. Keep Charles locked away, or, more likely, dispose of him, and use the Allen persona to manage the outside world and continue the work. But Willett, armed with that desperate letter, doesn't buy it. He goes out to the bungalow to confront the person there, the one still sometimes pretending to be Charles.
And the confrontation is revealing. The imposter's whole demeanor is off.
Radically off. This Charles is arrogant, cold, dismissive of Willett. And, crucially, he talks about history like he was there. He makes these little slips.
Like the comment about the coach.
Yeah, that's a brilliant detail. He complains about Sabin's Boston coat from the 18th century being damned uncomfortable. It's such a specific, visceral complaint.
How is that a slip-up?
Because Charles Dexter Ward, the 20th century antiquarian, would probably romanticize an old coach like that. But Joseph Kerwin, the guy who actually had to ride in it back in the 1700s, would remember it being bumpy and unpleasant. It's a tiny flash of the real personality underneath.
Clever.
Uh,
And Willett uses this encounter to force the issue.
he plays his trump card. He's the family doctor. He insists on a medical examination right then and there. The imposter tries to brush him off, but Willett insists.
And the exam confirms everything he suspected.
Every single anomaly. The cold, coarse skin, the weird breathing, the missing olive birthmark on the hip, and the presence of that new dark mole or scar on the chest. The physical evidence is undeniable now. This body is not Charles Dexter Ward's, not in its fundamental details. It's been inhabited, altered by someone incredibly old.
The medical proof backs up the historical slips and the creepy vibe, but the final nail in the coffin comes from intercepted mail, doesn't it?
Yes. This is where the global conspiracy comes into sharp focus. Willett manages to intercept 2 letters addressed to Dr. Allen at the bungalow.
Where are they from?
One is from Prague, signed Simon O. The other is from Transylvania, signed Edo H.
Wait, Simon O. like Simon Orange? And Ed H. Edward Hutchinson, Kerwin's original 18th century associates.
The very same. Still alive, still operating under aliases, still part of the network after 150 years. It confirms the insane longevity isn't unique to Kerwin.
What are they writing about? Just catching up?
Hardly. They're talking business. The business of necromancy. Bartering for bones, discussing the best ways to procure essential salts, checking the accuracy of inscriptions on old graves to make sure they get the right material. It's chillingly practical.
Just day-to-day operations for an ancient death cult.
Pretty much. And the Prague letter from Simon O. has this terrifying aside where he mentions getting something in Egypt 75 years ago and connects it to a scar Charles apparently saw on him back in 1924.
So Charles did meet these guys on his travels before the resurrection.
It confirms Charles met Ornis in Prague years earlier, likely setting the stage, getting final instructions or components, and the Transylvania letter has an explicit, sinister warning for Kerwin Allen.
What's the warning?
It says, beware of the boy, meaning the original Charles, presumably still alive but maybe captive at that point, and then it lays out the plan. It will be ripe in a year's time to have up the legions from underneath, and then all shall be ours.
Legions from underneath. So mass resurrection. Summoning entities.
That seems to be the end game. Not just individual immortality, but bringing back potentially vast numbers of ancient entities or minds, maybe those things Kerwin mentioned later, and then world domination, basically. Classic villain plan, but with a really nasty existential edge.
And the final piece for Willett is the handwriting, right?
Yes. He compares the handwriting on these intercepted letters, the notes from Simon Orr and Charles had copied earlier, and Kerwin's original 18th century manuscripts that Charles found. They're identical, a unique, archaic script used by the entire network across centuries.
So all the pieces click into place. This leads to the big reveal, the most important event of this section, Chapter 4.
Exactly. Willett puts it all together. Why were Charles and Allen never seen at the same time? Because it was one entity, Joseph Kerwin switching personas, sometimes playing the weakened Charles, sometimes the mysterious colleague, Allen.
Covering his tracks while he consolidated power?
Right. The physical evidence from the medical exam, the mole, the missing birthmark, the aged skin, the linguistic slips about the past, the identical handwriting connecting Allen to Kerwin and his ancient network, the motive revealed in the letters. It all points to one horrifying conclusion.
Joseph Kerwin has returned.
He successfully used Charles's research and body to bring himself back from the essential salts left after the 1771 raid. And the final awful realization for Willett is that Kerwin must have murdered the real Charles shortly after being resurrected.
Strangled him.
That's what Kerwin implies later. Strangled him behind the overmantel in the library, where Charles first found the hidden papers, then disposed of the ashes. So the person Willett encountered, the person eventually committed to the hospital, the person who finally escaped, that was Joseph Kerwin all along, wearing Charles Dexter Ward's face.
It's an incredibly audacious crime. Not just cheating death, but meticulously planning across centuries to steal his descendants' life and identity.
Okay, so connecting this back to the bigger picture, the stakes are suddenly immense. Willett realizes this isn't just about finding a missing young man or exposing an imposter. It's about stopping an incredibly powerful, ancient, organized cult led by a resurrected sorcerer who plans to unleash legions from underneath.
The fate of the world, potentially.
Pretty much. Willett, the rational doctor, is now forced into the role of, well, an exorcist or an executioner. He has to go back and finish the job the ancestors started in 1771.
So he returns to the Huatuxet bungalow, driven by Charles's last warning and his own grim understanding. He finds the entrance to Kerwin's old lair.
Yeah, hidden beneath a mundane washtub in the cellar. Lovecraft loved those contrasts, cosmic horror lurking under domesticity. And down there, in the darkness, Joseph Curwen is waiting for him.
And Kerwin isn't hiding anymore. He's boasting.
Full-on villain monologue mode. He confirms he strangled Charles
Yeah.
behind that overmantel where he found my legacy. He reveals he buried Charles's ashes out by the family plot, and then he drops this chilling line about the things down in the deepest tunnels.
The legions?
Possibly, or precursors to them. He says they've been starving for 157 years. It implies these entities, maybe partially resurrected beings or summoned creatures from the 1771 era, are still down there waiting, hungry. It ramps up the immediate physical threat.
But Willett finds something crucial down there too, doesn't he? A countermeasure.
Yes, amidst Curwen's lab notes and our chemical gear, he finds this ancient parchment. It's written in really rough, barbarous Latin and seems incredibly old, maybe 8th or 9th century.
1,000 years before Kerwin.
At least. This is huge. It suggests that Curwen's methods, the essential salts, the whole resurrection shtick, it's not unique to him. It's part of an ancient recurring evil. And there's been a counter-tradition, some hidden knowledge on how to fight it passed down for centuries.
Like an instruction manual for dealing with necromancers like Kerwin.
Exactly. And this text is shockingly specific. It gives the final solution.
What does it say? Can you translate the Latin?
It reads, Corvinus necandus est. Cadaver aqua forti dissolvendum, nec aliquid retinendum, which basically translates to, Kerwin must be killed. The body must be dissolved in aqua fortis strong acid, likely nitric acid, nor must anything be retained.
Dissolved in acid, just like Charles warned about Alan.
Precisely. The ancient text confirms the grim pseudoscience. Simple killing isn't enough. Burning isn't enough. You have to chemically obliterate the body, destroy the essential salts completely to prevent any possibility of future resurrection, leave nothing behind.
This sets up the final showdown, the most important event of the last section. Chapter 5, Kerwin versus Willett.
It's a battle of wills and words. Kerwin tries to unleash his power, shouting the names of the outer gods, the incantations Charles used Yog-Sothoth. He's trying to summon his power, maybe the starving things from the pit.
But Willett is ready for him.
He's studied the notes Charles collected, maybe even Kerwin's own formulae found in the lab. He counters Kerwin's chaotic summons with the ancient words of dismissal, the counterspells. He uses traditional names of power, Adonai, Elohim, Sabaoth, Jehovah, mixing them with the very same guttural alien chants Kerwin uses, but turning them back on him, binding the forces instead of loosing them. Oga Throd, Ai, Gabeli, Yog-Sothoth, Emga, Ai way.
So we fight fire with fire, magic with counter magic.
Yes. The rational scientist is forced to wield these forbidden incantations, and in the middle of this psychic battle, he does one more crucial thing. He speaks Kerwin's true, original, mundane name, Joseph Kerwin.
Naming the enemy. That breaks his power.
It seems to. The combination of the counter-incantations and invoking his true name defeats Kerwin. He collapses, vanquished. But Willett knows the job isn't done.
He has to follow the instructions. The Latin text, Charles's P.S.
Right. Victory is meaningless if the salts remain. So Willett performs the final, grim task. He gets the aquafortis from Kerwin's lab supplies and dissolves the body completely. Total chemical annihilation, making absolutely sure, unlike the men in 1771, that there is nothing left for Kerwin to return from ever.
He finishes the job properly this time.
He does. He excises the evil, chemically, and the aftermath confirms his success wasn't just local.
How so? The network.
Willett uses an international press clipping service afterwards. He gets reports confirming simultaneous mysterious explosions destroying houses in Prague linked to Joseph Nadek, likely Simon Orn's alias in Castle Ferenzi in Transylvania, described as unexplained gas explosions.
Too much of a coincidence.
Far too much. It strongly implies that when Willett destroyed Kerwin, the head of the snake, he perhaps also used formulae or power found in the lab to trigger the destruction of the key nodes in the network, eliminating Orrin and Hutchinson and presumably destroying their stores of essential salts too. The entire global operation is neutralized in one go.
Wow. Okay, so the world is saved. But what about the Ward family? There needs to be some closure for them.
It's a tragic closure. Willett advises Theodore Ward, the father, on the official story. Tell everyone Charles simply escaped the hospital and vanished. He tries to offer some comfort, stressing that the son they loved, Charles, was never the monster. He was just an eager, studious, and curious boy whose love of mystery and of the past was his undoing. The fiend was Kerwin.
Protecting Charles's memory, even in death.
Exactly. And for a final, private act of closure, Willett tells Theodore where he buried the real Charles's ashes, the ones Curwen had hidden. He directs him to place a simple, unmarked stone 10 feet west of the main Ward family plot in the North Burial Ground. A quiet, secret memorial for the boy who was truly lost.
What a ride. This deep dive really took us from, a young man's historical curiosity right into the heart of this massive, centuries-spanning necromantic conspiracy. And it all hinges on Dr. Willett noticing physical changes, weird handwriting, a familiar voice, forensic details almost.
It really does, and it hammers home Lovecraft's chilling idea that ancient evil isn't just a fairy tale. It can be organized, persistent, using pseudoscience to cheat death. This network, trading bones, using salts, preserving personalities from as far back as the 1600s, it's terrifyingly plausible within the story's logic.
And that warning from the intercepted letter echoes throughout. Do not call up any that you cannot put down. Seems like good advice generally.
Understatement of the century. It's the central cautionary message repeated across time, whether you're dealing with chemicals, magic, or just dangerous ideas.
So much to unpack there. What really stands out to you when you think about Willett piecing together this impossible puzzle? We should probably leave our listeners with something to chew on. A final thought.
Well, think about what Charles initially believed he'd found. He was convinced Curwen's papers held knowledge that could more profoundly revolutionize the current conception of things than Einstein. The whole plot relies on the essential salts being, in some sense, scientifically real within that universe consciousness as a presumable chemical residue.
Right.
So the provocative thought is this. What if that core principle could be harnessed? Imagine if future science, maybe without the evil intent, actually figured out how to use those essential salts. What if we could accurately resurrect the consciousness, the memories, the knowledge of anyone from history whose salts could be found? A brilliant scientist, a lost artist, a wise leader.
Wow. The potential benefits could be immense. Bringing back minds like Da Vinci or, Marie Curie.
Exactly. But given the cosmic horror that came attached to that knowledge in the story, the potential for abuse, the forces it might unleash, would it ever be worth the risk? Is there some knowledge so profound, yet so dangerous, that humanity is actually better off not knowing it, even if it means leaving the greatest minds in history silent? Is the price of that kind of resurrection too high?